To my father, I was always a disappointment. A security guard. At his lavish wedding, surrounded by bankers and socialites, he introduced me with that same sour look that spoke louder than words. He couldn't have imagined that in just an hour, his life and the lives of his wealthy guests would depend on his daughter's unprestigious profession, and that my skills would be the only thing standing between all of them and tragedy.
My name is Samantha, and at 29 years old, I never expected to be the center of attention at my father's lavish wedding. For years, he introduced me as just a security guard, with a slight grimace that made it clear he wished I had chosen a more prestigious career. But everything changed that day. Suddenly, what I do for a living mattered more than anyone could have imagined. The look on his face when someone shouted my name and pointed to the television screen is something I will never forget. My father, Richard Williams, built his life around status and appearances. As a senior investment banker at one of New York's most prestigious firms, he measured success in dollar signs and social connections. Our suburban home was immaculate, our vacations were extravagant, and our family photos were perfectly staged for his office desk. But beneath that polished exterior, our relationship was always strained by his impossible expectations. I was 12 when my parents divorced. My mother, Audrey, had finally had enough of his constant absence and emotional distance. She was a kindergarten teacher who valued compassion over competition, and their values had grown too far apart. The custody arrangement meant I spent weekdays with Mom in her modest apartment and weekends in Dad's sleek penthouse overlooking Central Park. Those weekend visits became increasingly tense as I grew older. Dad had my life mapped out: a prestigious university, law school, then joining one of his friends' firms. When I announced my plans to join the military after high school, he reacted as though I had told him I was joining the circus. The military, he scoffed during one of our tense dinners. Samantha, people from our background don't enlist. They become officers if they must serve at all. I enlisted anyway. 4 years in the Army taught me discipline, leadership, and most importantly, that I had a passion for security and protection. After my honorable discharge, I used my GI Bill to get a degree in criminal justice while working part-time as a campus security officer. From there, I built a career that made me proud, even if it never impressed my father. By 29, I had worked my way up to a senior position at Meridian Protection Services, one of the most respected private security firms in the country. We handled everything from executive protection to event security for high-profile clients. I specialized in threat assessment and had recently led security for a diplomatic conference that earned our firm industry recognition. My supervisor had even nominated me for a Professional Achievement Award. None of that mattered to Dad. In his world, success had a narrow definition. The fact that I wore a uniform instead of a power suit meant I had failed to meet his standards. When his wedding invitation arrived in the mail, I almost threw it away. Richard Williams and Eleanor Harrington request the honor of your presence. The cream-colored card with gold embossing screamed extravagance. Eleanor was wife number 3, a socialite from a banking family who moved in the same circles as my father. "You should go," my friend Alicia urged over coffee. "Maybe this time will be different." "Different how?" I stirred my latte absently. "He'll introduce me as his disappointment of a daughter who chose to be a security guard instead of a lawyer." "Then prove him wrong," Alicia said. "Show up looking amazing. Be polite but confident, and don't let him make you feel small." The night before the wedding, I called Mom for moral support. "Just remember, honey," she said, "his inability to appreciate your choices is his failure, not yours. You've built a life that you're proud of, and that's what matters." I held on to those words as I packed my overnight bag for the weekend at the luxury resort where the wedding would take place. Deep down, a small part of me still hoped for reconciliation, for some sign that my father could see my value beyond the career path I had chosen. I couldn't have known then how dramatically this wedding weekend would change everything between us. The Rosewood Resort sprawled across 30 acres of manicured gardens. The lobby buzzed with wedding guests, many of whom I recognized from Dad's social circle. I felt instantly out of place. "Samantha!" My father's voice carried across the lobby. He approached with Eleanor on his arm. "You made it!" His greeting was polite but distant. They moved on quickly, leaving me standing alone. The rehearsal dinner took place in a private dining room overlooking the ocean. My seat was at a peripheral table. Soon, my father brought an older couple over. "This is my daughter Samantha," he said, his tone casual. "She's a security guard. Not a threat assessment specialist, not a senior operative with Meridian, just a security guard, as though I spent my days checking IDs at a department store." This scene repeated itself throughout the evening. Each introduction followed the same pattern. "My daughter Samantha, she's a security guard." Sometimes he'd add with the slight shrug that communicated volumes of disappointment, "She chose a different path." By the time dinner was served, I had been introduced to at least 15 people, each time reduced to my job title, stripped of all context and accomplishment. The wedding day dawned sunny and clear. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon. I spent the morning avoiding the wedding party until guests began to gather in the garden. I slipped into a seat in the back row. It was during the pre-ceremony bustle that I first noticed something off. Working in security trains you to spot anomalies. A catering staff member caught my attention. His uniform fit poorly, and he seemed unfamiliar with standard service protocols. More tellingly, his eyes constantly scanned the crowd in a pattern I recognized from my training, not as someone looking to serve guests, but as someone assessing targets. I tried to dismiss my concerns, professional hazard, but the nagging feeling persisted as I watched him speak briefly with 2 other staff members, both displaying the same out-of-place alertness for catering personnel. I discreetly followed one of them into a service corridor that led to the kitchen. The man quickly slipped into a storage room at the far end. Hiding behind a large cart, I managed to catch fragments of their conversation. Rich pickings, estimated $2 million in jewelry alone. After the vows, during the champagne toast, 4 more coming through the east entrance. My blood ran cold. They were planning a robbery. My immediate instinct was to call the police. I found a quiet alcove and, identifying myself as a security professional, outlined my concerns. The dispatcher assured me they would send officers, but it would take at least 20 minutes for them to arrive. Next, I found the resort security office and, showing my ID, explained the situation to the head of security, Michael Jenkins. "We can't disrupt the ceremony based on an overheard conversation," he said, "but I'll place additional personnel around the perimeter." "The police are on their way," I informed him, "but they won't arrive for another 15 minutes at least. I suggest you position your team at all exits." Jenkins nodded, impressed by my professional approach. The threat I overheard suggested multiple perpetrators, possibly 7 in total, with 4 yet to arrive. They mentioned the east entrance specifically. As Jenkins mobilized his team via radio, I returned to the ceremony, which was now beginning. My attention was divided between the vows and scanning the perimeter. My father stood at the altar, beaming as Eleanor walked toward him on her father's arm. In that moment, I felt a pang of sadness for our broken relationship. As the ceremony transitioned to the reception, I realized with growing alarm that the police had not yet arrived, and the situation was escalating faster than anticipated. The robbers were positioning themselves now. I had seconds to decide my next move: warn my father and cause a scene that might provoke the armed suspects, or continue monitoring while waiting for police backup. Years of training kicked in, and I chose the approach least likely to endanger innocent guests. The transition from ceremony to reception happened quickly. Servers appeared with trays of champagne. I maintained visual contact with the 3 suspects, noting with growing alarm that they were now communicating via discreet earpieces. The first sign that the robbery was beginning came when the lights flickered briefly, an intentional disruption. In that moment of confusion, I saw the suspect near the bar reach into his jacket. "Gun!" I shouted, diving toward the nearest group of guests. Chaos erupted immediately. The armed man fired a shot into the air. "Nobody move," he commanded. "This is a robbery. Cooperate, and nobody gets hurt." 2 more men revealed weapons, while others began collecting valuables from terrified guests. I caught a glimpse of my father and Eleanor huddled together as one of the robbers demanded their jewelry. From my position behind an overturned table, I assessed the situation. 7 armed robbers, at least 30 guests in immediate danger, no police in sight, and the venue's security outgunned. An elderly woman near me began having what looked like a panic attack, drawing the attention of one robber. "Shut her up," he snarled. I made my decision in that split second. Rising from my position, I addressed the gunman calmly. "I'm a medic. Let me help her before she has a full cardiac event. You don't want a death on your hands. That's the difference between robbery and murder charges." The robber hesitated, then jerked his gun toward the woman. "Make it quick." I moved slowly, hands visible, kneeling beside her while assessing the positions of all armed suspects in my peripheral vision. As I pretended to help with breathing exercises, I spotted the police arriving outside through a window. The robbers hadn't noticed yet. Their leader was now confronting my father, demanding his watch and Eleanor's diamond necklace. "The safe code for the bridal suite, now!" My father paled. "I don't know it by heart." "No phones," the robber snapped, pressing the gun barrel against my father's temple. Something inside me snapped at the sight of my father so vulnerable. Whatever our differences, I couldn't watch him die. "There's a master list of codes at the front desk. I work here. I can get it for you." The leader turned, suspicious. "You work here doing what?" "Security," I said, rising slowly to my full height. As hoped, he approached me. As he came within range, I made my move. Years of combat training took over. In one fluid motion, I disarmed him, using his momentum against him. His accomplice reacted immediately, firing in my direction. I felt a searing pain in my upper arm, but maintained my grip on the leader, using him as a shield while calling out to the security team, "Now!" The venue security team and 2 undercover police officers who had blended in with the crowd emerged. Gunfire erupted briefly, but the robbers, seeing their leader captured, began to surrender. One tried to escape through the kitchen, taking a server hostage. Despite my bleeding wound, I pursued him. "It's over," I called out, locating them near the loading dock. "Police have the building surrounded." "Back off or I'll shoot her." "You're making this worse," I said calmly and authoritatively. Seizing a moment's hesitation, I lunged forward, deflecting his weapon arm while simultaneously freeing the hostage with a precise strike to his wrist. The gun clattered to the floor as I subdued him with a restraint hold I had perfected during my military service. Making my way back to the main hall, I found the scene secure. Police had all suspects in custody. My father stood with Eleanor, both looking shell-shocked. When he saw me, his face registered shock at the blood soaking my dress sleeve. "Samantha, you're hurt." "It's just a graze," I said, though the pain was intensifying. Before he could answer, a paramedic intercepted me. As I was led away, I heard one of the guests say, "That's Richard's daughter. Did you see what she did?" The next hour passed in a blur of police statements and medical treatment. The bullet had indeed just grazed my arm. The police captain told me, "If you hadn't identified the threat and acted, this could have been a massacre. These men are part of a crew that doesn't usually leave witnesses." Finally, the commotion subsided. My father approached as the paramedic finished bandaging my arm. "The police said you saved lives today," he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. including, possibly, mine and Eleanor's. I didn't know how to respond. Years of dismissal couldn't be erased by one moment of crisis. "I was just doing my job, Dad," I said quietly, "even if it's just being a security guard." His face flushed at having his words thrown back at him. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing. My boss at Meridian had called twice, leaving messages saying the company was incredibly proud. I turned on the television and saw my professional headshot from the company website on a news segment. "Attempted armed robbery at luxury resort wedding foiled by security expert," the headline read. Guests described my actions in increasingly heroic terms. Then the police captain appeared. "The quick thinking and courageous actions of Miss Williams prevented what could have been a tragic outcome." At the post-wedding brunch, the atmosphere was completely different. Guests who had barely acknowledged me yesterday now watched me with newfound interest. My father was holding court with a group of friends. "I always knew she had potential. That military training really paid off, didn't it?" Was he actually trying to take credit? Before I could react, someone at the bar turned up the volume on the TV. The news anchor was saying, "The security expert who intervened has been identified as Samantha Williams, a decorated military veteran currently employed by Meridian Protection Services." The screen switched to security camera footage. There I was, disarming the lead robber. There I was, pursuing the final suspect through the kitchen and resolving the hostage situation. A hush fell over the brunch. All eyes swiveled from the television to me. I watched my father's reaction as he stared at the screen. His champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. In that moment, everything changed. Not because I needed or wanted his approval, but because for the first time, he was seeing me as I truly was, professional, capable, and valuable on my own terms, not his. The broken glass seemed to break the atmosphere in the room as well. Guests who had barely nodded hello now approached with questions and praise. My father stood frozen, watching me. I walked over to him. "I didn't understand," he finally said once we found a quiet corner. "I thought you were working mall security, and that would make it okay to belittle me in front of your friends?" The question hung between us. His eyes followed mine to the TV screen, where my professional biography was now displayed. Army veteran, criminal justice degree, specialized training in threat assessment and VIP protection. "You protect important people," he said slowly, as if realizing it for the first time. "People like me." The irony was not lost on either of us. "Yes, Dad. People exactly like you." The weight of that statement settled over us. For years, he had dismissed my career as insignificant. Yet it was precisely that career that had saved him and everyone he cared about. "Samantha," he said, regret in his voice, "I owe you an apology, not just for yesterday, but for years of misunderstanding." It was a start. But as I looked at the man who was finally seeing me, not his failed expectations, I knew it was a very good start. In the weeks that followed, my life changed. Meridian promoted me, placing me in charge of a new division. I received the Civilian Bravery Award at a ceremony attended by both my mother and, to my surprise, my father. He began asking questions about my work, listening to the answers. When a major financial magazine included me in their 40 under 40 list of security professionals, he framed the article and displayed it in his office. "I always equated success with a certain lifestyle," he told me over dinner one evening. "But looking at your life now, I see a different kind of success. You have purpose, respect from your peers, work that makes a tangible difference. You have integrity. That's worth more than any corner office." I smiled. It was more than I had ever dared to hope for. My father finally gave me the recognition I craved, but I realized I no longer needed it to feel complete. True security comes not from others' validation, but from living authentically.
Have you ever had a moment when someone finally saw your true value after dismissing you for years? Or have you experienced a dramatic event that changed a difficult relationship in your life? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found something valuable in my journey, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories of personal triumph, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that their path is valid, even when others can't see it yet.